All right, well, we'll get started then. It's 1 minute after. I'd like to welcome you all to the Nantucket Memorial Airport Commission for May 11th. We have a couple announcements before we get started. This meeting is being both audio and video recorded, and if you have any comments, we would ask that you please use the microphones. Commissioner Drake and Commissioner Topham are both participating remotely. Commissioner Drake due to geographical distance and Commissioner Topham due to personal disability. So all votes tonight will be taken by roll call. With that, are there any commissioner comments or concerns with the agenda as prepared?
No.
Hearing none, we'll consider that adopted and move on to the draft minutes. We have the minutes of April 20th, 2017. Are there any comments on the draft on the minutes from anybody?
No.
Hearing none, we'll consider those adopted. We have the warrants from 4/19 and what's that? No, you're allowed to adopt the minutes.
Okay.
Yep. So
adopted.
the warrants, however, I do believe that need to be voted upon. So we have the warrants of 4/19, 5/3, and 5/17. Are there any discussion on those warrants? Is there a motion to approve those warrants?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second on the warrants. We'll do a roll call. We'll start with the commissioners present. Commissioner Buscarin, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Planzer?
Aye.
Commissioner Drake?
Aye.
And Commissioner Topham?
Aye.
And I also vote aye. Moving on, we have the pending leases and contracts set forth on Exhibit 1, which I will turn over to Manager Rafter for a brief review.
A number of these are the seasonal airline lease agreements. The first is with American Piedmont, which is for the office space and ground handling. And that includes, that'll be the business fee plus $6,960. The next is American Airlines Republic, which is the actual provider of the service, and that's the $12,000 plus the landing fees and business fee. Then the lease agreement with Delta Airlines for $18,800, and that's for seasonal service plus landing and business fees. The next is a pending agreement, United Airlines. You may recall I briefed the commission previously that United has been operating without an agreement for a number of years. We have sent them emails and imploring them to sign it and identifying that if they don't, it may preclude them from operating out of the airport this summer. The individual we were dealing with has left the company just recently, so we're working with a new contact and we're hoping to hear back from her shortly and hopefully get that in line. But I just wanted to get a sense from the commissioners that, you know, if you don't want me to take a hard line, that's fine, but I think after 3 years that we need to have an agreement with these folks, and we're going to do whatever we can to get them to sign the agreement.
Did they pay their fee last year despite failing to sign the contract?
They have been paying their fees, yes.
Timely?
I believe so, yes. But again, after 1 year, 2 years, now we're after 3 years, we think it's, you know, time that there's other obligations and liabilities that, you know, cover us once you get an agreement signed, as you know, so. The next is the lease agreement with JetBlue for $18,000 plus landing and business fees. And then the next agreement is the parking system, and I don't know how you want to take these.
I think if you go through them all, and then maybe we'll break out one or two of them.
Okay. The next is for the parking management with Republic Parking Systems for $90,000. It's a 3-year management fee plus the approved annual expenses. We're still waiting, I think, on the Jacobs on call. We didn't get that today, did we? The next is Gray Wall, and that is for $24,150. That's our Viochi software for 22 licenses plus 30 hours of software development. Next is a contract with Door Concepts for $2,075 for repair of the automatic doors in the terminal. Then we have a contract amendment with the state of New Hampshire for $565. We added one person for training in a fuel spill session, and a contract extension with Trillion Aviation LLC for from June 30th to September 30th. And again, that was the consultant that we used for the parking lot, since we're going to be implementing that July 1st. We wanted to make sure we still had them on board.
Thank you, Mr. Rafter. Does anybody have any questions or concerns with any of the matters that were just reviewed? Yes, Commissioner
I have
Flannery.
one question. The American Airlines Piedmont, the ground handling for American Airlines, why is it just 1 month where the other one is for 3 months or 4 months?
I think it should,
Oh, are you talking about on the front?
Uh-huh.
May I?
yeah, sure. Is
Please.
it the month?
Yes.
office?
Yes, please.
I think I can still.
Oh, good.
Janine Torres, office manager. So the American for $6,000, that's actually an annual lease. It's a month term, but if you read further back, it renews for 12 months consecutively.
Okay.
So it's actually an annual lease. The seasonal agreements are a 4-month minimum, so we actually put the months that they're participating on the front of the lease document.
Okay, why would we do that, the month renewing instead of a year lease? Do you know?
All I can say is that's the way it's always been.
Oh, okay.
That was
That's my
town
best
council's
Yeah.
recommendation.
Mr. Chairman, I couldn't hear the question. I'm sorry.
So the question was on, I think we've covered this maybe a couple of years, I think I might have asked the same question as well a couple of years ago. Why on the face of the lease, on some of the leases, specifically the one in question is the American Airlines, does it state that it's month to month, essentially, when in fact it's an annual lease? And the best answer is essentially that it is still an annual lease, but that has just been based upon past practice.
Okay.
Is there any further concern or reason to think that we may want to revise that?
I think we can certainly review it. I believe it was reviewed a year or two ago by town council, but maybe our aviation council could look at this. too.
Maybe I wouldn't hold it up this time, maybe review it next year.
Yeah, maybe next year we actually, or between now and then, now that we have aviation council, go over our standard document. It's probably not a bad idea for
Right, and
improvements.
find out, I mean, there might be a perfectly good reason.
Right. I would expect it probably could even be refined, once he's
Yeah,
gone through it, it probably will come out better next time.
Right.
Okay. Any questions or concerns with any of the other pending leases or contracts? We do have the representative from Republic, and being that is a more significant contract, if anyone had any concerns or questions, we could certainly pull it out and vote on it separately. If there aren't any other questions or concerns, then we could keep it in. So I'll leave that to the discretion of the commission.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move approval of the lease contract.
Is there a second?
Second?
Is there any discussion or questions on the leases and contracts? Hearing none. Commissioner Buscarin, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Planzer?
Aye.
Commissioner Topham?
Aye.
Chairman Drake?
Aye.
And I also vote aye. Thank you. Moving on, is there any public? I'm sorry?
I just wanted to thank the gentleman from Republic for sitting in.
Yeah, thank you, Don.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you very much. We
Oh.
look forward to a long relationship with you guys.
Likewise, we'll be in touch. Moving on, is there any public comment tonight? Hearing none, we'll move on to pending matters, starting with the formerly used defense site status. Mr.
we are
Rafter?
still eagerly waiting a final decision from the Army Corps of Engineers. We're hoping that comes soon. We're led to believe that it should be. On the general fund repayment, I had a conversation today with Mr. Pantelli of the FAA. He said we should expect a response within a week, but that they had some concerns that there were some of the request was for beyond the 6-year period, and they would not consider that. So he's going to put that in writing to us exactly what it is. On the Hangar 1 fair market value appraisal, we're still awaiting that appraisal.
Does anybody have any questions or comments regarding those 3 items?
No.
Hearing none, we'll move on to the air service update.
Air Service, I received a draft of the base presentation that we will be presenting to the 9 airlines that we have meetings scheduled with at Jumpstart in Providence in early June. We're going to be reviewing that and detailing it a little more. We're doing some individual proposals as well as a regional approach type of proposal. We also had recently an application that was filed with FAA for service between Nantucket and Hyannis from a company known as G-Jets. They currently own a Pilatus, and we're looking at purchasing a 402. We made our comments on that. Allies Air has apparently leased or purchased a former airline, Island Air airplane, and it was painted. My understanding was that Mr. McGrath was going to be bringing that up to Nashua, New Hampshire yesterday, and they're looking to put it under a certificate that is based out of Nashua to begin 5 or less flights a week from between Nantucket and Hyannis. That's the regulation because they're not commuter certificated, and then they're going to look to get a commuter certificate for that. I was also informed by Mr. McGrath that Island Shuttle continues to pursue their certification, and he believes that they are getting extremely close to it. And again, that would be the commuter operator between the island and Hyannis. Just one other note on air service. Hyannis Airport is rehabilitating a runway there, and just recently they were doing some intersection work which caused a number of flights to be canceled by Retrix because of the size aircraft that they're flying. So that may have some minor impacts going forward in the summer, but they will be rehabbing their runway throughout the entire summer. That's the air service piece.
I think everything.
I saw an ad for a Tailwind Aviation. Are you familiar with that?
Vaguely. They have been out there quite a bit advertising. It's a seaplane operation. Tailwinds was the operator, if you recall, that was looking to provide seaplane service from Manhattan to Boston along with Cape Air, and apparently I think the landing in Boston never came through. They have been out there now on social media and everything else, and our team has sent them the information they need to operate properly out of Nantucket from an agreement perspective as well as the fee schedule and things. So yes, we've received it from various sources. There was an article in the Cape Cod Times, there was an email blast, there were a number of things. So we don't have a lot of details other than what we're reading too, but it's that time of season where we get some of those folks and we just try to make sure they're operating under our rules and regulations.
A seaplane?
Yes, landing at the airport. We
Okay.
confirmed it was at the airport, that they're not going to be landing in the harbor.
Landing in the harbor would be interesting in the middle of the summer.
Yes, the various town officials expressed some concerns with that, rightfully so. So, no, we did get a confirmation it will be at the airport.
So I guess it's amphibious.
Yes. Better be.
Any other questions or comments regarding air service?
No.
Not hearing any, we'll move on to the airport business plan concept.
Okay.
Then we have the
Manager contract. It looks-
Oh.
If you want to skip
Oh, is that? Sorry about that, thank you.
for me to say.
Let's just skip over that.
Yeah. it's not
So, we have a revised version in front of us, which has been reviewed by our Aviation Council, and I would say fine-tuned. It follows the discussion, I think, that we had at the last hearing, and I would open it up to the floor up to any questions, comments, or concerns that any...
My name is Chairman. I would like to just explain a couple of things about it.
Yes, please.
You did not get a red line version of this because the changes from the last one were minor. But I'm just going to review quickly the principal changes. There were a lot of cosmetic changes, but the principal changes from what you saw before was that the references to the town have been taken out of the document by airport counsel based on his experience with the case involving Dukes County. So it's the airport commission that's hiring the manager, not the town. And in section 4.7, we talk about the guidelines established for airport employees with respect to business travel and lodging. And those are the same as the town, so there should not be an issue there. And finally, the provision that the manager keep the town informed of relevant things going on in the airport has been slightly revised, but it's now incorporated in paragraph 10 of attachment A, and the intent, I think, is the same. The other significant change is that in the renewal provision, which is in I believe Article 2, Article 3, Article 3.1. We had a renewing, the original draft and what you saw last time had a renewing for 3-year terms after the initial 3-year term. Council recommended that the renewals be for 1 year rather than for 3 years, just to give both sides more flexibility. And I ran that idea by Mr. Rafter. He did not have a problem with it, so it's been incorporated above, or in here. Those are the significant changes from the document you saw before. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions, Mr. Drake. I thought I had asked last time, which is now this has been changed, that this was not going to be a rolling contract, and now I'm seeing that it will actually be, because it's going to be renewed automatically as of the ending date for successive 1-year terms. And I personally don't approve of that, so because that just locks you into I think a little bit longer, and maybe if something goes wrong, and maybe there is a clause in that also that if something goes wrong within those 1 year, but it's a continuous, as far as I'm concerned, it's a continuous contract.
I'm sorry, that's true, but there is a provision that we can terminate it at the end of the year with certain notice, and he can too.
Okay.
So
and then the other question is, on the 2 weeks on under 5.2, is there a limit as to how many 2 weeks can be carried over from each following fiscal year?
I wouldn't.
2 weeks.
Only 2 weeks.
Only 1 week carry forward.
Only the 2 weeks. Okay, that's what I want to be sure of, that it wasn't going to be 2 weeks every year. I would just want to be clear on that. And my only other comment is that, and I mentioned this to Mr. Rafter, is that some of the airport tenants, not the employees, feel that they really don't know Mr. Rafter. And so I suggested that, and maybe he has done that recently, that he makes himself a little bit more public, stop by, have one at the desk. And I realize that's not our Nantucket town employees, but it's the airport tenants and employees who feel that they really don't know Mr. Rafter. So that's my only comments on the whole thing.
Okay, thank you. We can talk about that next week, Mr. Rafter.
Certainly. I'd love to know who it is, because they can help there as often as they can.
Does anybody else have any questions or concerns with the draft?
No.
I
No.
would just say myself, I'm happy with the changes and agree with the improvements that I think Aviation Council really was,
Valuable.
yeah, very valuable. And I think it's a stronger contract in the end for both parties. With that,
It gives credence to the notion of avoiding jailhouse lawyers.
is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
And what would that motion be?
I'll make that motion. That we approve the employment agreement with the airport manager, Mr. Rafter.
I'll second that.
The motion has been made and seconded. Is there any comment or discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we'll have a roll call vote. Commissioner Buscarin?
Aye.
Commissioner Planzer?
Aye.
Commissioner Topham?
Aye?
Chairman Drake?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Thank you, Mr. Rafter.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I might interrupt for just a second, I don't know if anybody noticed, but on the signature page of the document, there is room for the signatures of all the commissioners. I think while we normally just have a total of 3 signing, I think in this case it's appropriate, and I hope everybody's agreeable to have all the commissioners sign this agreement since everybody's in favor of it, and I think it just creates a good record.
Is anybody opposed or concerned to that?
No.
Hearing none, it shall be done. Shall be done. Moving on to the airport business plan concept, or back to it.
I'm going to try to make this as painless as possible. There's a number of slides here, but we can zip through it pretty quick. This is basically the concept of the airport business plan, why we need it, what some of the elements may be, and some of those other things. At the next meeting, I'll present to you where we are in development of our business plan. We've been working on this for a number of years, but I want to at least have something before, something I could show you that's salient before I show you the concept. So this basically, today what I want to talk about is the current situation in the industry, some of the issues today and tomorrow that we're facing, a strategic plan versus a master plan versus a business plan, and how we're doing what is an airport strategic business plan, and then some of the next steps. Again, you can go on from there, Dave. The industry, GA, as you know, is very sensitive to economic conditions. Over the last 3 years, GA aircraft shipments have decreased, the jet shipments have decreased, certificated pilots have decreased, and it has an impact on us in terms of our GA side, but also overall fuel volumes and based aircraft. This is an interesting little factoid of the fractional fleet. It says it grew for the second year in a row, according to JetNet LLC in 2016. 882 aircraft were used in fractional ownerships, up from 837 in 15. The number of fractional owners, however, have declined from 4,369 at the end of 15 to 4,145 at the end of 16. So the number of aircraft are up, but the owners are down. And that has a significant impact, I think, on our business. Some of the airline challenges and overview in the industry, airline consolidation, as I mentioned before, 4 airlines can provide 80% of the service in the United States. There's the high cost of the regional jets has resulted in them being phased out. There's a number of regulatory impacts that are impacting the airlines that are creating a pilot shortage, 1,500-hour rule, the crew rest rules. There's a major issue of financing the system. There's a lot going on in Washington in terms of proposals to look at privatization or corporatization, I should say, of the air traffic control system. The airports are fighting for a cap, raising a cap in the passenger facility charge, and the foreign carrier impacts. There's a number of foreign carriers because of this new 737 MAX and some other airplanes that can come across the pond that are seriously looking and are entering into U.S. markets. So there's some concern from the national operators. This is a little bit older slide, but I just wanted to show you graphically the Airway and the Airport and Airway Trust Fund, which is where we get our capital funding. It funds the air traffic control and a number of other pieces like the operation of the FAA, has been declining dramatically, and that's primarily from the airlines not paying the taxes on these ancillary fees, and there's no appetite in Washington necessarily to tax those fees. So that's having a significant impact on funding the overall system. Just a little bit about our airport. You all know this, number of acres we have. We have a lot of land. We have our own control tower. We operate the FBO. A couple of good runways with 6,303 being the longest. We have a good-sized terminal, GA building, ARFN operations building, the SRA, a number of hangars. And we actually have a lot of equipment and vehicles. It's 75 plus that we have And we have to maintain these assets and make sure we're a good steward to the community on those. Some of the major tenants, again, we're the FBO. Emily Air, which actually will soon be FedEx, or I'm sorry, it will be Brookfield Assets subleasing to FedEx. We have a number of hangars, tie-downs, some non-aeronautical on Bunker Road, UPS, and the United States Postal Service, the airport gas, and Sun Island in the future. Some concession, again, our concessions, we have the restaurant, Crosswinds, rental cars, various retail opportunity will be up. Number of business licenses that we issue each year as well, which makes us very unique. And our year-round airlines or signatory, Cape Air, Nantucket Air, Retrix, the seasonals, JetBlue, United, Delta, and American. Other major operators, as you know, NetJets, Tradewinds, Alpha Flying. We do, as I said, our own fueling services, line, ground handling. Aircraft cleaning is provided through a company called Fresh Air Services. We do a number of other services where, as we just agreed to, the parking will be sourced out. Some services that we don't have available on site are the maintenance and repair of aircraft, avionics, and aircraft rental and flight training. We do have operators that provide air charter services, though. This is just a snapshot of our based aircraft, and you can see it's been fairly flat over the years, somewhere in the 40, 45 tie-down range. And our fuel volumes, you can see, it stays around 1.2, 1.3 million gallons. The interesting part is we pump 4,000 to 5,000 a month in the winter and 400,000 in the summer. You can see that's increased a bit, and we're expecting it to increase in 17 as well. Some of the market competition, and these numbers, I can't guarantee them because we've received them in different manners, but it's fairly close, I would say. We lead in terms of passenger enplanements, and the airports on the left are ourselves, Nantucket, Hyannis, Martha's Vineyard, Bedford, Hanscom, and then New Bedford. And while we're up there in passenger enplanements for commercial service, you can see in fuel we're up to 1.3 million, which is fairly high, but you look at Hanscom at 9 million, I think the majority of that is due to the military base that they have there. Financial results, and it's, I don't know if that's intentional or not, but it's blocking out the surplus and deficit for 16. But we saw a dramatic turn, if you will, from 15 to 16. We were going from a 232 loss to a 1.2 million profit. Again, that is with, you know, an influx in use of retained earnings, but we did turn the corner in 16, so that's good news. It's a little tough to read, but this is out of the 2013 MassDOT Economic Impact Study, and this is of all airports or commercial service airports in the state. You can see where we rank in terms of total payroll, total employment. Logan obviously is a big leader. Hanscom is big, and so is Westover, but we're right below that at number 4. In the older version of that study, they broke out the economic impact of the Cape and Islands, and you can see where the leader in the Cape and Islands airports with the employment and the payroll as well as the output. So we're big in that in the Cape and Islands market. Quick summary: aircraft operations are down, passenger employments have decreased, based aircraft are up slightly, but it's very minimal. Jet fuel gallons are up, avgas is up. Operating revenue is down slightly, but the expenses are down further. And again, this is for 16. The operating subsidy has been eliminated, but our net earnings have jumped significantly. And again, you can see that's before the transfer of retained earnings. Some of the issues we're facing today, non-aeronautical land uses in Bunker and Sun Island roads. We have island shuttle certification, we're still waiting on that. Hangar 6, which is in a serious state of disrepair, we need to get an RFP out on that, and we're going to put it out as is with somebody to come in and refurbish it. Working on the housing issue, our flight information display, public address system project, vault project, runway 1230 geometry analysis, apron phase 3 area, our ground service equipment garage, and some issues that we have with TSA reimbursement. We're hearing that that could be scrapped in future budgets from the national level. And our parking lot fee structure and operation, we can take that off the table soon, hopefully. Some of the other issues that we have, though, seasonal growth in the airlines and corporate, competition with the ferry remains relevant. Freight operations are starting to take hold. And our the airline business model has changed dramatically, and it's still changing. And there's just a few of those things that you can see: differential pricing, reservations, whether there's penalties or not. The market's changing, and the habits of the passengers are going to have to change. Looking ahead, we're looking at, how do we continue to provide the quality aviation products that we do, making the highest and best use of our airport property, both aeronautical, non-aeronautical, commercial, non-commercial, and financial sustainability through leasing land and eliminating or reducing our costs and expenses, and in increasing the awareness from the community too. Again, I think there's an issue out there sometimes that the community mixes what the airlines do with what represents the airport. Some of the regulatory changes we're looking at: safety management, TSA. There are bills being floated around that may require 100% employee screening, which is going to be very difficult for us to do. And then federal funding at the same time. They're looking at reducing or eliminating law enforcement reimbursement. And there's talk that the Essential Air Service program could be eliminated. And that could have a significant impact on us, as well as other communities are losing service left and right. These are just some examples I wanted to show you in terms of how the format will go. In my next presentation next month, I will go into detail to show you how we get these different formats established. But for example, this may be a financial sustainability goal. The goal could be reduced dependency on fuel revolver to balance budget by $250,000 by the end of FY18. Then we would list the objectives, and you can see some of them here: increasing rental income, new rates and charges, collection rate, parking lot revenue, advertising revenue, and reduce utility costs. Beyond that, they will go into, after the objectives, we will have action plans and associated budgets. This is just another example in human resources, again, what the goal may be, and showing you just some of the objectives. When I present to you next month, you will have what we are proposing for some of these goals, and we'll be looking for your feedback and direction on whether we should add, subtract, or change and modify any of these. Again, you may have a business development air service delivery goal, as well as asset improvement and management, and an environmental goal. We just put them in different categories, and then we'll go from goals to objectives. This is a very interesting slide. It kind of outlines the difference between a strategic plan, a business plan, and a master plan. As you know, we have a completed and approved master plan. We are combining this as a strategic business plan, so you will see the vision statement, the SWOT analysis that was done, our strategic goals, the mission, and the business goals, objectives, and so on and so forth. You'll see that in our document. We are not to the point where we have the ability to break out the specific budgets by goal, but that's one of the things we're working towards. So next month you will see the strategic business plan outlined in detail of where we are. This is already in place. We have our mission statement, our vision statement, our values statement, and we'll go through that again next time. Some of the reasons why you want to do an airport business plan, I know to a number of you this is kind of, it's secondhand knowledge and you know this, but I just want to make sure everyone in the community understands that, we're looking to generate more revenue, reduce and eliminate expenses to secure more capital so that we can rely less on any subsidies and then create more jobs. And that's the bottom line, I think, for a lot of business plans. Another reason, or two other reasons, are under grant assurance number 24, the FAA requires any obligated airport to be as financially self-sustaining as possible given the circumstances that exist at that airport. So that's a requirement. Also, it's one of the best ways to demonstrate that we're striving towards achieving the goal of becoming financially self-sustaining and being good stewards of the government assets. This is, I think, a very good slide to show how we're, being good stewards, if you will, and the airport is being good steward of the assets. And you can see it identifying the assets, investing in capital in them, making the highest and best use, meeting the needs of the customers, and then maximizing revenues and minimizing expenses. there's a lot of value in having a business plan, as I'm sure you all know. One is as a planning tool, and it takes you through articulating a vision and so on and so forth, all the way up to providing the basis for making adjustments. The next, another value is it's as a management tool. It maintains focus, keeps everyone on the same page, provides actionable plan, and provides decision-making framework. Thirdly, there's a major value as a communication tool. Provides the opportunity for discussion, increases awareness, builds support, and fosters transparency. A lot of this has to do with drilling it down into our staff and the employee and the teams, so that everyone knows what page we're on. We're all on the same page. We're all reading out of the same book. So, basic description of an airport business plan: a document that uses a logical and disciplined structure to set out goals, objectives, and action plans that drive day-to-day operation and management of the airport. In essence, an airport business plan transforms the vision and long-term strategic goals for the airport into specific goals and actions within each functional area of the airport. And again, it keeps everybody aware of what they are. These are the elements of the business plan, and you'll see these in my next presentation: the mission, vision, and values, the goals, the objectives, the action plans, and then the budgets. It's a three-stage process, and it's not as though we have taken these and said, okay, we're going to do phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and then we're going to do a business plan, and then we'll go to work. We have been all along developing this, and I say we, our senior management and team have sat down a number of times and started putting meat on the bone here. So first phase was preparation. We're through most of the development, and we've been in implementation all along. So it's a work in progress type of thing. But at the end, we want to have a document that we can demonstrate and show this to the public too. This is a timeline. It's been moved quite a bit, but we did the internal briefings, developed an updated mission, vision, and values. We've conducted a SWOT analysis, and the next stage is finalizing the goals and objectives. In reality, it's a review of all this that we're going to look for the commission to give us the input in. So this is a moving time frame. And I just wanted to present this to you so that you can understand where we're heading and what we're doing. And if you have any comments, suggestions, ideas right now, let me know if we're going in the wrong direction. And you may want to wait till you see the SWOT analysis and some of the other things where the meat is on the bone. But I just wanted to make everybody aware of it's a bit of an educational process for some of the community, some of the staff members, as to, what's a business plan, why do we do a business plan, what good is it, and, it's not one of those things that we're going to do and just put on the shelf. It's going to be a living, breathing document as to how we operate the airport. Told you I'd try to be as quick as possible, all those slides.
Well, no, that's all right. I mean, it's important. There's a lot of work you clearly put into that, so.
What is SWOT?
Thank you.
What does that stand for?
Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
Okay, thank
It's
you.
essentially whenever you're doing an analysis of any business or an operation, you go in, you look at it from that perspective, and you identify all your strengths, your weaknesses, what are the opportunities and what are the threats, and then you base your other things around that, how you develop your goals and things. And you'll see there's a very scientific approach that we've taken to identifying our goals, to making sure they're what's known as SMART, specific, measurable, etc., how we filter them out, and you'll see the approach that we've taken. It's a very detailed approach. We didn't just sit there and say, what do we think these should be? They have to meet certain parameters and criteria. So, and in the SWOT analysis, we've done those, but we've also identified and broke down in detail what each one of those are, which each one of our strengths are. So it may take a while for some review and comment, but again, this is a breathing document, so if you ever come up with something after you see it and say, hey, we should put that in there, we'd be glad to hear it.
Right.
What's the origin of these documents in the plan?
This actually came from what's known as ACRP, Airport Cooperative Research Program. It's under the Transportation Research Board, which is in the National Academies. In fact, NOAA is one of the ACRP champions, is what they're known as. They receive about $20 million a year in funding. Airports submit to them problem statements, and then they produce these documents that guide you through. This was taken from how to develop a business plan, why you need a business plan, and so on and so forth.
What does SWOT stand for?
That's what.
That's
Strengths, weaknesses,
Weaknesses.
opportunities, and threats. A SWOT analysis. And in the next presentation, you will see that in detail, and you'll see what our SWOT looks like. You'll see how we went about, identifying goals and so on and so forth.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I think that this is an excellent exercise, and I commend Mr. Rafter and the rest of the people who've been involved in it. And I know we're just at the beginning, but I think it's important enough to not only the airport but the community that I would suggest we not advertise, but we try to publicize through social media and so forth these discussions and presentations at the commission meetings. Just because I think that people need to know, people who are interested need to know that we're doing this, and get engaged themselves. Some for better, some probably for worse, but nonetheless, I think that it's important. That's my view. I don't know how others feel, but I think it's something I'd like to get out there.
I agree, and one thought that I had was perhaps we have a dedicated webpage or a sub-page on our site, and that way there, if you were to put something on social media or a tweet, you could simply link it directly to that actual PowerPoint presentation. And then maybe on that one page would be sort of the, it could be business plan development or something along those lines that then has the links to, as you progress, once you feel that the documents are, obviously now that you've presented it here, then this one could be posted, and as future presentations are there.
I think that's a good idea, and on other airports' websites, I've seen a section, if you will, that says doing business with the airport. And it might have the business plan and what opportunities available, all those types of things. So.
And also perhaps an encourage comments on that page.
Feedback, sure.
Sort of a link of some sort that, if you see something here or in the plan, we'd love to hear, your thoughts.
Okay. Will do.
Are the selectmen, business manager aware of this business plan?
I don't believe so. Again, I want to present the concept to I think we want to reserve a little bit until we see what the business plan is, make sure that's fine-tuned a little more. But I'd be glad to present it to them or FinCom or anyone else that's interested. But.
Yeah, I think that would be maybe where you start. Obviously, we want that support from those people, and this is one way to get it.
Yeah, I think probably maybe after the next our next meeting, we try to get on the Board of Selectmen's schedule to make a presentation to them of the approach that we're taking, and to underscore our concern in a positive way that the underpinnings of the airport are strong.
I wish I would have timed that so I could at least give them an idea, because when you see this, it looks like it's very long, but if you can say, I'll do it in 10 minutes, that's, But I'll be glad to present it if we get on the agenda, so.
Always good to put our best foot forward with those people.
Right.
Okay.
And I want to thank Mr. Rafter and his group because it sounded very interesting, so wish him luck.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, we're all going to be part of it, so wish us all luck.
We need a
I
roadmap
know.
if we're going to get
I know,
somewhere.
but right now, I think they started it.
Do you, if I may, do you see this as a rolling agenda item now for,
I would.
or just as
I don't know,
needed?
it's every month, but it may be either
Reoccurring.
quarterly or 6 months. Yeah, definitely it's going to be annually. We're going to have to look at this and review it and update it because it does change.
Right.
Well, I was thinking during the development phase, as you're working through those next couple of,
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, that's a good idea.
items that
Until we
you-
get it finalized, yes, that's a
till it's
good idea.
finalized, it seems that it's something that maybe now that the parking's behind us or
Well,
something we can kind of focus on a
That's
little
one you
bit.
check off and you may replace with something else. So,
Right.
Yeah. I think that's a good idea to keep it as a standing agenda item for the next few months till we get this crystallized.
Agreed.
Good. Any other comments or questions on the business plan? Hearing none, we will move on to The noise presentation from our environmental coordinator, Noah Carberg.
Thank you, Noah Carberg, Environmental Coordinator. Thank you for the opportunity presenting a 7-slide annual noise abatement effort summary. Brief summary, I'm looking to go over 4 points: our landing fee incentive program, a summary of our noise complaints to date, and retrospect for past years, our APU Action Log, and our pre-season promotion items. So the landing fee incentive program, as you remember, it's a program that was actually really suggested and coordinated by the Nantucket Civic League many years ago. In this program, we give participating tenant airlines a 15% landing fee reduction for 85% compliance with the VFR offshore/noise abatement routes. What I've worked up for here is a brief statistical summary of compliance for the program. Please do take note that fiscal year 15 and 17 are partial years only, as noted. You'll probably see that working from left to right, AMA and Cape Air show consistent compliance. They've actually never not met the monthly compliance figure.
Excuse me, no, AMA is Marine Home Center.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. AMA is, Marine Home Center. Neither company has failed to meet the monthly compliance since May of 2015. Rectrix is currently at 78%. While this is below the threshold for the rebate, 8 out of 10 flights are compliant. I look at this as a good number, and I want to be sure to represent to the commission that senior management of Rectrix, they are committed to raising this number. In my own personal opinion, they're still dealing with growth and experience of a new airline and codifying these practices. Middle slide, landing fee rebate. Fiscal year 16, given that that is our full calendar year, or full fiscal year, we rebated about $33,000 in fees back to the air taxis. We're on pace for a similar amount in 2017. Of course, this also depends on their operational numbers. Hypothetically speaking, if Marine Home Center, AMA is flying fewer flights more efficiently, they will have spending less in landing fees, will be reimbursing a lower portion of that. So that number can fluctuate without regards to compliance. And then general program stats on the right side, I bring up, not to, humble brag or bring up staff efforts as far as how much work they're putting in, but I really look at this as a transparent accountability effort for the community, both in the operations and flight hours that we audit. We now have a good record of annual data. These are noise complaints over the fiscal year by month since fiscal year 2013. Generally, they can range from 0 to 75 complaints per month. Obviously, they're much higher in the season. Don't look at fiscal year 17 to judge this decrease as effective necessarily, and I think as noise complaint coordinator, I get too much credit for reduction, too much blame for an increase. I think the real barometer of success is judged by how the airport responds to these complaints, not necessarily the number of complaints and the fluctuation monthly when looking at year over year. More important, and what I try to show in this slide is I try to normalize each of these complaints by the number of operations. So we're looking at complaints that we receive per 1,000 operations, because that way we can really look at the outliers and look to explain, what are these higher peaks where we see 3 or 4 complaints per 1,000 operations. And to address some of these in particular, in July and August in fiscal year 2016, we had a lot of complaints from the Podcopter and a lot of complaints we traced to the TFR associated with the president's visit over Martha's Vineyard. This changed a lot of the IFR routing for the region, not only our local tower, but with Cape Approach as well. In August and September of 2015, this was an Island Air 208, the Cessna Caravan issue, overflying the island, single engine issue that we've gone over in past years for the commission. I can revisit that, but I think everyone's pretty solid on that concept and how we addressed it. December of fiscal year 16, we had a stroll with a lot of both IFR and VFR complaints. That stood out. You can see there's usually a little bump over stroll. This one was exceptional in fiscal year 16. And then in fiscal year 14, May and June, this was also an Island Air issue, most notably with the Cessna Caravan. So that's why I try to break these out by complaints per 1,000 operation and really use those to guide sort of an analysis of what were the keying events for that period. One item I believe I have not addressed in presentations past, we have started at the operations department what we call an APU Action Log. This is a spreadsheet-based entry. When observed, ops staff will notify pilots of their APU runs that are in excess of 15 minutes. 19 notifications have happened since September of 2015. What I find interesting, when the operations department set this up, they set it up in our VOC system, and they set it up with a comment period, or a comment input where they could acknowledge what the pilot would say about being notified of the APU action. And 16% of these notifications resulted in the pilot shutting down the APU. 37% of these were some variation of, well, my passenger just arrived or they're arriving imminently. 11% were some variation of, well, my aircraft needs more than 15 minutes for pre-flight. 21% were related to pilots either saying, I can't lose my flight plan, I can't lose my spot in the system, or they had an other operational issue. An international departure was one that was given. There were a couple other miscellaneous ones that I filed under this comment. The indication to me is that at 37%, addressing the client owner directly could be the best influence of future success. There are existing measures we can reprogram, and possibly new ones we can research that are directly focused at the person in the back of the jet, for example. And then to recap some of our annual noise abatement efforts that we address pre-Memorial Day, we have an annual noise abatement letter. You have a copy of that in your packet, along with our distribution list. It's roughly 41 operators that make up about 80% of our operations. After this point, I found you're really getting into diminishing returns. The next, adding another 40 operators might gain you 1 or 2 percentage points. We certainly can do it, but I'm using that old corporate 80% of the effort, 20%, 80% of the reach, 20% of the effort rule. I could certainly revisit that. We do complaint investigation and follow-up with every noise complaint. Not every individual who files a complaint wants or appreciates follow-up, but we look into the reasons for the complaint. Was it an IFR operation? Was it a pilot who blew the corridor? And we provide follow-up with both the individual who provided the complaint and, when applicable, with the pilot who precipitated the complaint. In our quarterly tenant meetings, we bring up this reminder. We appreciate every opportunity you can take to comply with the VFR noise abatement routes and the APU restrictions. We do ongoing record keeping and data analysis to guide our future efforts, as I just demonstrated in the previous slides. We continue to do our FBO catering handout, which is our tri-fold, fly-friendly brochure. We like this. It's a very direct, very low-cost effort to reach pilots, crew, and passengers. We continue with our FBO signage. One new item we're starting for this next year. We have a new television in the first floor of the FBO that scrolls through flight-aware radar tracking. We find that some of our signs will disappear, whether this is due to crowding at the counter in the summer or specific group of pilots who might not appreciate that pilotage or appreciate that signage. We're digitizing it. It's not going to go away this time. And then the APU Action Log, which I just listed. So that's keeping it brief this year. I'm happy to answer any questions now or as a later follow-up.
No, I appreciate your efforts, Noah, and I think you're always interested in improving the situation. I think this demonstrates that, and I appreciate the presentation.
Thank you, Tony.
Yeah, great presentation.
Here, here.
Very informative.
Thank you, Noah. I had just two comments, and one is, having been involved on this side of things with the environmental subcommittee and sort of working with Noah really since he's been in the position, is I think the single biggest improvement help has been the response and the education and explanation to individuals that is helpful. And I think that some of the decrease in numbers, and you don't really have them there, but if you look at the numbers from '08 till sort of when you started, they were much higher. And for a variety of reasons, I would say, but part of it was that I think folks who felt that they took the time to submit a complaint but then never heard just kept doing it and doing it and doing it. And at least hearing back and having an explanation provided, I think, goes a long way and probably helped to significantly, those numbers are significantly reduced from sort of the '08, that period of time I had mentioned. So thank you for that, and I think that it's well worth it. The one item that I did also notice, though, is the APU Action Log. So from 15 to now, only 19 notifications, essentially out of tens of thousands of operations. I just wonder how much effort, is being given. And I understand the busy season, and I know we've had these discussions. And part of the items that I've noticed is also the shoulder season, where there may only be, 1 or 2 jets on the ramp, and then it might be a little easier for the staff, and I believe that you've got a plan, yes.
One thing that we discussed internally, and we're looking into this, is if we can, in the VOC system that we use, have some sort of let's say a time clock. So in terms of, all right, everybody's busy, how do I track whether he's running 15 minutes, whatever? You can call in, the ops watch desk can just start a track on whatever end number. And once the clock gets to 15, it flags and says, hey, So we're looking at ways to try to better measure that without taking a lot of staff time, and then have the actions implemented after it. So that's one of the things we're looking at.
I think that would be well worth it, and that had been some of the discussion that we had at our last environmental subcommittee. And I think one of the things to note on the APUs is that it's not only noise, but it's emissions and carbon and everything that we're trying to, just do the best we can, and the educational component. So I appreciate it. At the same time, you got an airport to run.
Understand
and the
a lot
limitations
of that comes from
the
other
National Air
airports.
Service
They're waiting in line.
is understood. So thank you for that. I don't have
Thank you.
anything further. Anybody else, anything further on presentation?
Thank you.
Moving on to the fiscal 17 third quarter update. Manager Rafter.
This is what was presented to the Board of Selectmen, and I apologize, the timing didn't work out, that we didn't get it to you first. But essentially, if you look at the back page or second page, it has the detail. The bottom line is the revenues were up slightly. Well, they're actually up 262, up 3%. And the expenses were down, so our net results are up about, after debt service and everything else, we're showing a, this is not, I don't think I have the right version here. We were to the good about $200 and some thousand, 266,000, I guess it is.
So 19%.
Ahead of last year, yeah, 19% above last year. So we're trending in the right direction.
That's great.
I'll be glad to answer any questions on detail if I can. We had discussion earlier, debt service, we're looking to get that under control and also try to get some off the books. The big thing that's on there right now is the terminal still. We do have a set aside for PSCs, and on the summary page, at the bottom, you'll see where we started with certified retained earnings at June 30th, 16 of 1.6 million. Add in the surplus from 17 actuals to date, 1.3, and then back out the reserve we have for PFCs. We're projecting at the end of March, $1.4 million retained earnings. I think that will probably go up by the end of the year. So for the shape we're in good shape. Again, this comes down to, remember, it's somewhat of a shuffling. We were relying quite a bit on retained earnings in the past. What we're doing now is relying a little more on the fuel revolver. But we've had the ability to reduce that cap where the money now flows directly into the operating sooner to balance our budget. I know there were some concerns about, we shouldn't be using retained earnings to balance our budget, and that's correct. But what we're using is our actual profit from fuel to do that. So, and should continue to see a growth in our retained earnings.
Any questions? I had one, Tom, which maybe Jamie needs to answer, but I'm just wondering, under general insurance, where there's a difference, is it likely just due to a timing of when that's paid?
Yes and no. Most times it is a timing. There was a point, I believe it was last year, when we got a quote that somebody was out trying to get our business and we got a significant decrease, but usually it's a timing where there's any significant fluctuation.
So this actually might represent actual savings then because of changes that you've made?
I know we did see a significant reduction over a period of time, yeah.
Great. Thank you. Anybody else? Hearing none, we will move on to the manager's report, please.
On the project side of the house, the air traffic control tower, the final invoice was in the warrant, and we're in the process of working to close that project out. The vault replacement, we have a meeting scheduled for tomorrow, and I'm hearing rumblings that there may be a further delay in that project, so I will keep you posted. The interactive employee training system is in place and working well for the security identification display area and non-movement area driver training. We have another meeting set up tomorrow with the vendor to discuss and finalize the movement area driver training as well as the Part 139 modules. The flight information display system PA project is delayed. There's a major issue in obtaining electrical quotes that are within this universe, as well as just being able to find an electrical contractor. The initial sub bailed out on them. They went out and sought 4 other vendors. They only received 1 proposal, and to say it was extremely high would be a very kind comment. So they're working diligently to see what they can do to get an electrical subcontractor. Our crack sealing project, the state is scheduled to begin that next week. The work will be done at night, and they will be crack sealing all of our runways, so that's a great program that the state provides to us. Security camera, they're installed. We're coordinating the remote access for users. The ramp bids for Area 3 came in at $2.495, almost $2.5 million for construction alone, and we had $2.2 million for total project costs, so we're working through that with finance and others as to how we can accomplish it. We had a bit of an issue with the geometry analysis of the intersection 1230 and 624, and we're working with FAA to resolve that issue. The housing project, our architect is working to prepare concept drawings and floor plans and coordinating that with the surveyor that we will then submit to FAA for their approval. And the next step beyond that will be working with the town's consultant to look at the financial numbers to ensure that it's a viable project for developers. On the RFP, RFQ side of the house, the airport gas station RFP is out. Proposals are now due May 26th. We're creating an addendum to identify proper payment structure there. Terminal concession retail, proposals are due Monday, the 15th. We're working on the Bunker Road RFP. Solar RFP, proposals are due May 22nd. Door maintenance and passenger boarding ramp bids are due in also on May 22nd, and the apron floodlight bids are due June 1st. On the operational side of the house, on the freight side, we're working on developing more specific minimum standards for freight operations. In our current minimum standards, it simply says that the airport manager has the right to determine what specifics are needed. So we're working on that, and then we will be getting the larger freight items out of the terminal, will not be processed through there once somebody meets those standards. We had our FAA certification inspection, and it went extremely well. The inspector was very complimentary of our team. He liked a lot of the things that we did. He even passed it on to other airports. There was one thing I think it may be considered a letter of correction, and it's called a PCN, or pavement condition number. The state has been working on that, but they were delayed with their contractor, so it's not a big thing, but we will be getting that to them shortly as soon as the state completes it. But overall, the inspection went very well, and I'd like to compliment our team. They did a great job. We have a hangar, as I mentioned earlier, it's in a state of disrepair that we're going to be putting out an RFP on. Our advertising consultant will be on site next week finalizing some agreements with potential advertisers. Just some dates to remember, or a date to remember, is the triennial exercise, September 13th. Working up to that, we're doing a lot of planning meetings. And any questions before I go into statistics? Okay. The operations are up for March, 5.36, and flat basically year to date. And on the employment side of the house, they're up 13.2 for March, which is a good sign. They're heading in the right direction. Still down almost 10.5% year to date, but again, it's leveling out. You can see here where Cape Air overall was up 5%. Trade winds, although down 63%, there's a difference between 32 and 12 passengers. And Nantucket Air is down 28%. In the Boston market, Cape Air saw a 19% increase in that area. In New Bedford, though, down 46%, but again, we're looking at numbers, 134 total. Hyannis, Cape Air down 32%, Nantucket Air down 28%, and Retrix carried 746 passengers on 120 flights. And the Vineyard saw a 15% increase in March. On the fuel side of the house, jet was down 23.3%. Year to date, it's up 1.09%. And I say it's down 23%. Again, it's about 1,900 gallons. The avgas is down for April, jet was up 71.24%. So that makes us about 2% ahead of last year, year to date through April on the jet. On avgas, it was down about almost 5% for the month, but still up year to date 10.35%. And through April, up 21%, and year to date up about 11% on the avgas. The freight, again, climbing in the right direction, but still down almost 26%. I think some of the word has gotten out that we're keeping an eye on some of this, but also there is some additional activity going on with some of the freight, and we'll probably see continuous improvement there. You can see Cape Air's down about 25%. United States Post Office up 51%. That's a big jump. Wiggins, FedEx down or up 4%, and UPS Wiggins up 60%. I needed to ask, and I shouldn't do this publicly, but we need to make sure if Wiggins, or if Retrix is carrying any freight, that they're filling out the proper forms. And noise complaints are down to 0 for March against 2 last year. As you saw in the presentation, NOAA does a great job in terms of getting back to people, investigating, and finding out what the causes are. So, the only other thing I had, Mr. Chairman, was in the personnel side of the house, seasonal employees. We have all positions filled. We have staggering start dates this week. We had a number of folks start in the operations. We had some from the FBO start. I believe we're up to about 6 of the 8 beds in the house are full. We have another group coming in next week, and then we have the gate guards, custodian, and maintenance starting after that. We were fortunate to find a source of employment in Puerto Rico of a group of workers that work in the airport that I believe service Cape Air. So they're familiar with the airline, they're familiar with airports. They come in, they don't need a whole lot of training in terms of basic familiarization. And best of all, a number of them can stay beyond the August 15th date. So we're very fortunate to have those folks, and we welcome them. That's my report.
Thank you. Any questions or?
What did I say?
The SM, the operations
Oh,
specialist?
yes. Initially, if you recall in our budget, we were looking at 2 positions, and we changed that to, we cut the operations specialist, and we're looking to hire a safety management specialist manager, because at the time we were being told that SMS was going to become a requirement. We had 1 year to comply with everything. That has been put on a back burner now, and I would like the permission to convert that back to the airport's operations specialist position, because we have a need in that department significantly too.
You want a motion on that?
Any objection or concern from anyone?
No.
Yes, it would be just
No.
unanimous consent.
Thank you. Thank you.
And if I may, for clarification on that, are there still 2 positions? And this is a change in
If-
one, or is it
No,
only
if
going to be one position?
This is one new position. If we, depending upon where we are with SMS, if we continue to want to do that in-house, we would request that possibly in next year's budget.
And I know that we had some challenges last year, which, on the ramp, a level of service, and I don't know if that was directly related to the early departures, that you feel that that's going to be addressed through the longer.
Typically, that's what those issues were. August 15th, we would lose all of our college students, and that was last year about 90% or more. We have, I would say, a good 4 or 5 this year that will be staying. The other thing that has helped improve some of the service turnaround times was when our ops department worked with Viochi and had the fuel orders directly disseminated to the fuel trucks. So now we dispatch our fuel trucks through the Viochi system. The drivers no longer have to come upstairs, get their sheets, and go back out and back and forth. They're just continually going from airplane to airplane with their orders, and the person upstairs is dispatching them accordingly. So between those 2 things, I think we will, and Preston has done some tweaking of schedule, I think, as well. I think we added a quasi-part-time position in there to offset some of that, so.
Great, thank you. Does anybody have any other questions or comments on the manager's report? Hearing none, we'll move on to commissioners' comments. Anyone?
No.
Anyone on the phone?
I
Yep, go ahead, Ms. Topham.
I do. Arthur, I did not want to infer that I was not happy with Mr. Raptor's management styles when I was asking my questions, because I am very happy with him, but I just wanted to clarify some of those items for myself.
I'll get out more often.
Duly noted. Mr. Drake?
Thank you.
Chairman, I think it'd be worth announcing that because of the bumps in the schedule of this meeting and last meeting, that the next meeting will be on the regular meeting date of the second Tuesday, which I believe is June 11th.
So I'll just repeat that for anybody. The next meeting is June 11th.
On the regular schedule.
On the regular schedule. My only comment, and I meant to bring it up during the noise presentation, was just whether that would, an idea that has also been reoccurring is the open line of communication with ATC. And I know that there's been some difficulties in sort of being on the same page there, but I think that it is helpful to make an effort to, keep them also apprised that when possible, understanding safety, everything else is first, but when possible, to promote to the extent possible the routes that it's appreciated.
Yeah, they have a number of new folks, and I'm almost positive, I want to speak for Toppy, but I'm pretty sure he makes sure that that's put into their training too, so
But maybe we could,
reiterate it.
a brief,
Just
that we're hoping that
Yeah.
that could be done.
over a cup of coffee, we could sit with them.
That's sort of what I was hoping for. Thank you. I didn't have anything else. Is there any public comment? Hearing none, we would entertain a motion to enter into executive session per Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, to review executive session minutes enumerated on the agenda for possible release, possible review and release. For Clause 3, discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, which an open session may have a detrimental effect on our bargaining position. Item C, Clause 3 and 6, consider purchase, exchange, lease value of real property and to discuss pending litigation to Gatto versus the town, which an open session may have a detrimental effect on the negotiation or litigation position of the commission. And item D, to discuss strategy with respect to pending litigation related to the snow removal equipment snow blower, which also likewise an open session discussion may have a detrimental effect on the litigation position of the commission. Is there such a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second? Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we'll entertain a roll call. Mr. Viscarin?
Aye.
Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Mr. Drake? Mr. Drake, you still with us?
Yeah, I said aye.
Oh, thank you. And I also vote aye. This meeting is adjourned, not to return to open session. Thank you.